Hello, this is Unexplained America, and I'm your host, Lisa. And this week is a very spooky, headed into Halloween episode. So, this week we're going to have listener stories of their unexplained experiences, and it's going to be so much fun. There's so many stories, so much fun, and some truly creepy experiences that I'm going to share with you. And I thank all the listeners for sharing with me. And also, if you do have an unexplained spooky story, I plan on having another episode in February. So make sure to check the show notes. You can message me on all the social medias and reach out to me on email and just send me your creepy, spooky, unexplained story. Okay, so this first spooky story comes from my listener friend Jeff. Okay, so back in 2007, about 5 or 6 months into my ghost hunting career, my team and I had an abandoned church here in Arkansas that we used to use to test our new equipment and to perform our first few investigations. The building was owned by the next door neighbor, so we did have authorization to be there. My co-lead investigator and I had a mutual friend that was a skeptic, and he decided he wanted to join us on the investigation of the church. So we decided to bring him along on one event. Now, it was about 10:30 at night or so, and we were in the middle of an EVP session. We have had plenty of activity in this place in previous hunts, but it was very quiet and inactive this night. The skeptic that was with us asked us, "Would you mind if I tried leading an EVP session and see if I can capture something?" In hindsight, we shouldn't have had someone without experience do this, but because it was a very calm night activity-wise, we decided to let him do it. So, my co-lead and I stood by the front door as our friend walked up to the front of the church where the preacher's podium would normally be. It started out as a very normal EVP session, but then it took a very dark turn. After about 2 to 3 minutes, our friend pulled a small Bible out of his pocket and started reading excerpts from it. We thought this was an interesting approach, especially being in a church. Our friend then started getting very hostile and starting degrading the Bible. He started saying things like, everything in this book is false, and if he doesn't believe a word of it, and what is in it. He then started ripping pages out of the Bible and throwing them on the ground and stomping on them. All of a sudden, we heard a loud crash come from the back left room. This is a very small church, and there are only 2 small adjacent rooms behind the sanctuary. When the crash happened, our friend started running towards us, and as he is running towards us, we see the door to the left room aggressively swing open, and we see a large, dark figure run out of the room and start heading towards us. It looked like a huge shadow figure with its head down, like it was charging at us. All 3 of us turn around and run out the front door and head to our car. As we get to the car, my co-lead turns around, snaps a random picture of the church with his digital camera. We then jump in the vehicle and leave. We get about a half mile down the road, and my co-lead slams on his brakes and pulls the car over. I look over at him, and he's staring at his digital camera. I ask him what he sees, and he just slowly shows me the camera. On the picture he took, he captured a huge black skull floating above the front door where we just came out of, staring at us. We have not been back to the church since this happened. Whew. Oh my goodness. Wow. This is so spooky. Chilling story. So Thank you, Jeff, for sharing. That is amazing. So many questions. Would love to see this picture. Oh my goodness, that's wild. So, okay, so we have another story, okay? So this next story is from a listener friend, Ben. And this happened in around 2005 or 2006. The area is called Clifty, a really small town between Huntsville, Arkansas, and Eureka Springs. Okay, but this one is also Arkansas. So, some friends. Edit. Okay. Edit on. Okay, some friends and I were coming back from Eureka Springs to Fayetteville late at night, and a few of us had to go to the bathroom. We stopped on the side of the road in Clifty and jumped out. Before we had a chance to do our business, we all jumped back in the car. Everyone in the car asked what happened, and we all told the same story. We saw a horse standing on his hind legs, coming towards us with glowing eyes. Yes, some of us had been drinking, but except the driver, who never fibs, like never tells lies. He also had the exact same version of this story as the rest of us. Years later, I Googled scary places to visit around Halloween, and on the list was go to Clifty and search for the glowing eyes horse. Ooh, okay. That is creepy. And again, this is a small town between Huntsville, Arkansas, and Eureka Springs. And obviously, if you know about Eureka Springs, they have the very haunted legends going on there. They have the Haunted Crescent Hotel, the Haunted Basin Park Hotel. So a very kind of active area for sure. So thank you so much for Ben for sharing this story with me. This is anyway, it's hard to imagine a horse and scary eyes and not fun. Late at night on the side of the highway just gives me chills for sure. That is definitely a scary story. So, this next scary story is from a good friend of mine. His name is Chris, and we go way back. And I've known this story, but I did get it fresh from Chris, and it is super chilling. Okay, so in 1994, Chris was coming home. He would have been in high school. He would have had a curfew of around 11-ish, and so he is coming down for locals of White County. This is Highway 267. So he is coming down this highway. It's just a 2-lane highway. And this is 1994, okay? And so he is, probably booking it, going fast. So he's coming in to town towards his house on this highway. And he is approaching it's going to be to his right is a cemetery, okay? And this is Gum Spring Cemetery. And so he's coming in, and then all of a sudden, he sees a little boy on like a red bike, like come from the ditch and dart out like right in front of him. And he is just, he just throws his feet on the brakes. He is coming to a screech. He is trying not to hit this boy on the bike. And he just knows he's going to hit this boy. And he is just, his truck is just locked up. So he doesn't feel anything. He doesn't hear anything. He is just panicked. And the car comes to a stop, and he just knows that he has hit this boy. He's had to have hit this boy. And he gets out of his truck. He has a flashlight. He is completely panicked. He is looking everywhere. He's looking under the truck. He's looking in the ditch. He's looking all over the road. And there's nothing. There's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. And he spends several more minutes. He is completely shaken. He is completely beside himself. Just, oh my goodness, what just happened to me, So he just spends some more time, kind of still looking, still panicked, just doesn't really know what to do. He's like, I didn't hear anything. He saw this boy. That was it. And, yeah. So he gets back in his truck and he goes home. And he comes in the door and his mom is there. And she said that he is white, like he is ashen. He is shook. And she's like, what has happened? What happened to you? And at first he doesn't say anything and they keep after him. I mean, they can tell that something has happened. And finally he tells them, like he tells them. And he said the boy, he couldn't give a big description of the boy, but the bike was like red and kind of looked old-fashioned bike, like 1960s-ish bike. And it came directly from the cemetery side. This boy just came out of the ditch from nowhere but the boy was gone. The boy was not there. I mean, the boy was real. Chris said the boy was just as real can be, and nothing. And to this day, this gives him chills. He went back the next day, and then he didn't really want to look further into it because he thought, what I saw was a ghostly boy. So he never, he thought about going into the cemetery. He thought about looking at the graves and, looking at the dates or to see if there was any boy. He said the boy was about 8 to 10 years old. So again, to this day, just totally gives him chills. And that is just, and it was a little bit foggy. It wasn't for sure if it was foggy that night. That area, I will say, if you're familiar, if you're a local, but it is pretty foggy, can be foggy-ish, but he saw a boy clear as day, just come out on a bike right in front of his truck. And he just thought, man, I hit this boy. I ran over this boy. So, that was a good one. So Chris actually has more. So he did a couple years after this incident. Actually, it would have been sometime around 1997. Chris was on his way home from spending a day at the lake. He said it was summertime. We have a lake, and he lived in Searcy, and so where I'm from. And at the time, still to this day, we have a lake very close by. So he had been at the lake, spending time at the lake all day, and he had a friend with him. And so he was coming home from the lake. There is a road that kind of cuts through, that's kind of runs along the little Red River, if you're familiar with that, and kind of goes by what's called Lobo Landing. So it's a 2-lane highway. It was not, it was dark or dusky, but not late at night. They had been at the lake, so it was probably 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there, not too late at all. But they're driving this 2-lane highway, and there are, houses, kind of, this is very rural, but there are houses, there are mailboxes along this route. And him and his friend, see a figure, standing beside the road. And as they get closer to it, it is this ghoulish face, it's like a child, but just awful, demonic child, Chris said, a Chucky child, not a cute little kid situation. And this figure is just standing beside the road, and then nothing, it just disappeared. It was there, it's gone, it totally spooked them. I'm sure Chris in the back of his mind was thinking about his incident before, but just totally just this figure that appeared and then was gone. And they both saw it, both him and his friend. And yeah, and they even went back the next day, just kind of driving along that highway just to see if there was maybe some type of something that would explain what they saw, but they never could. They never found any. There wasn't a statue, or how people will put different things beside their mailboxes or whatever, but nothing like that. But it was just as creepy as all get out, just totally terrified them, just completely. They were like, what did we just see? Oh, so another incident. Chris gets it. He did say that he has like instances where he'll have dreams that kind of come true, or, just kind of maybe, I don't know what you would call that, if he's actually like a empath, or like maybe, just a touch of something. But he does have another incident, and actually it is an incident that he himself had on his own, and then his wife actually had. So they this would have been in 1999. So this happened. They both went and met actually at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And this would have been, they had built a new arena. So it was like so this arena is called the Pauline Whitaker Animal Science Center. Okay, so at this time it was pretty new, and this arena is, of course, this big arena. They had horse shows, sheep shows, cattle shows. They had classrooms there and offices. So this place is really, really big. And so at this time, like, Chris is in, his degree is towards the animal sciences, and he is actually like working at the arena. And he said they were actually having like a beef, so they were having like this beef master show, if I'm reading my handwriting correctly. So basically there was, a lot of cattle there, I guess. And so, his work at the arena was basically like kind of security, just making sure that the animals were good, making sure that no one was in the arena when they shouldn't be overnight. So this was overnight, just to kind of protect things. And so these shifts were like, he said they were like every 2 hours, I guess people were changing hands. So like him and a friend actually were kind of rotating. So they were rotating their time there, just going around the different, what do you even call those? Pins, like looking at the pins and such. And so it's dark. He's making his way around the arena, checking everything out. And he hears what sounds like door slamming, and it's kind of coming from the classroom area of the arena. Okay, so it's just, I'm sure everything like reverberates and that kind of thing, you can imagine. So, and he's the only one there. So he's going there, and he's like, someone's in this building. So he's goes towards, where he heard this noise, and he checks it out, doesn't see anything, doesn't hear anything. And then he continues on, just checking the pins, checking the animals. And then later on, he actually hears footsteps. And so he's like, okay, this is like boots, like heavy footsteps, heavy boots. And he's like, okay, someone is in this building. So he goes again, runs all over the place. He's checking it out. He's looking everywhere. He's looking in the classrooms. He's looking in the pens. He's looking, everywhere. And there's nothing there. Just nothing there. So he's like, okay, just must be my imagination, And so he goes on, and then he's not going to say anything to anybody, but his friend Zach is kind of doing the same thing that he is doing. And so kind of, I don't know if the next day or whatever, so he still doesn't say anything, but Zach says to him, he's like, yeah, I just kept hearing what sounded like someone in the building. And Chris was like, did you see anything? And he's like, no, I just heard, boots. I heard footsteps. I heard, closing, door slamming, this kind of thing. And Chris is like, I did too. So they're like, oh my goodness. So later on, they talk to their boss, who has worked there in arena for a long time. And again, this arena was new at the time, but she had worked in, the Animal Science Center and such and department. And so her name was Wendy, I believe. And so they're telling her about their experience. And she's like, oh, that's just so-and-so. And Chris could not for the life of him remember like who she said, but she actually said a name like Bill, Tom, whatever. And she's like, oh, yeah. So she told the boys that before the arena was built, it was like a dairy barn. It was like a dairy barn. And she would have to go out and milk. These cows like had to be milked every 8 hours. And so it would be overnight and whatnot. And yeah, she would just be there alone with these cows. And there would be this old man, like a figure, like she would hear the footsteps. And then she would see an old man in overalls and boots. And he would never, it was just like just a ghostly presence, a figure. And he would come out of nowhere. He would go out of nowhere. And yeah, and so repeatedly they would have these, this apparition, these ghostly going on. And it was just like, oh, it's just old man so and so. So, yeah, and so Chris is telling me his story. So his wife Bobby, she was in the same program at U of A, and they had met and started dating. I don't know if they were dating at this time, but she was actually kind of more or less working like in the offices, and again, it's offices and classrooms, and this place is huge. And she would be like, yeah, we'd be up, we'd hear these noises, and one day we actually saw this figure in overalls and, just as an old man. And he was far away from him. And all of a sudden he just would appear down this hallway and then be gone, just be gone. No, no noise, no presence, no anything, just there and gone. But they would experience the same things as far as like footsteps and noises and slamming doors, and nobody was there except for this old man. Whoever. Yeah. So the Animal Science Center at the University of Arkansas, guys. So yeah. Very interesting stuff. Very chilling. Like just totally unexplained. Ugh. So I think for me, out of all these stories, like the little boy coming out of the ditch. Whew. Yeah. So thank you, Chris, for giving these stories. And Bobby, oh goodness, these were some good ones. We got a few more to go, but these are awesome. So this next creepy story, in fact, there's two, comes from my good friend Cody Johnston. And I will plug his information in my show notes because he is co-host of Cryptids Across the Atlas. And so you need to go check out his page and platform for sure and listen to his episodes. But this is his creepy story, his spooky story.
Hey, Lisa and Unexplained America fans. My name is Cody Johnston, and I am one of the co-hosts of Cryptids Across the Atlas. And I figured I would hop on here and record a couple of my own weird experiences for everyone to enjoy. The first one is a strange thing that I experienced in Lone Oak, Arkansas. So my wife and I built our house out here in 2016. And a couple years after we moved in, I would be laying in bed. Our master bedroom is on the second story. So a small house in a field, master bedroom upstairs, up high. And I'd be laying there, and my wife would already be sound asleep. And I would kind of catch something out of the corner of my eye. I kept noticing this, what looked like a green light, fly up to the upstairs bedroom window, kind of hover there and bob up and down a little bit. And when I would look over at it, it would shoot off. Now, I was up reading a book, my Kindle to be exact, so the lights were off, but the backlight of the Kindle was what I was reading with, but the room was pitch black. And the first time I saw this, I thought it was a trick of the light. But it happened a few nights later, the same thing again. I was laying there reading my Kindle, and this green light I can almost see it getting brighter as it comes closer to the window and then just hovers. And it's bright enough to actually cast the shadow of the mini blinds on the wall and to see the green glow casting on the wall in between it. Now, this isn't like a beam of light, like a headlight. This is like an orb, like a floating light. Like I can see that there's not light coming from behind it. It literally looks like it's a contained light, almost like a drone, how you would imagine a drone to look, but there is no drone. I can't see any prop guards or anything like that. I can't hear anything. And by all means, you would hear the hiss of a drone. I fly drones pretty regularly. You would absolutely hear the hiss of a drone right outside of your window if you're awake and listening for it. And sure enough, I quickly glance upward and look back at the window, and it flies off again. Well, this happens another night. And this time it like made me jump like when it happened. So I jumped up and actually kind of like went over to the window to look to see what on earth is going on. And this, of course, wakes up Elaine and she's like, "What's going on? Like what are you doing?" And I was like, "I swear, for the past couple weeks, just at random times when I'm laying here reading and you've already fallen asleep, this green light keeps floating up to the window, and as soon as I like turn to look at it, it flies off." And of course, she looks at me like, "Cody, you're crazy. You didn't see anything." Like, now she wasn't that dismissive, but in my head, I was like, she thinks I'm insane. And so she's like, "Oh, well, okay. I don't really know what to say, basically." And so we went to sleep. Another week or so goes by, and this is in, winter at this point. Well, I think it was actually around November, December, so late fall. And the same thing happens again. And I literally, I know I'm wide awake. I see the shadow start appearing of the blinds, and I see the green glow. And so I turn and I look, and it flies off. And she looks like, I guess Elaine like turns and she's like, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I saw that." I'm getting chills telling this. And she's like, "Is that what you've been telling me you saw?" And I was like, "I'm so thankful you finally weren't asleep for this." And she's like, "No, I was like just turned over and like laid down to get to sleep and like could see light. And I saw it this time." And so we both witnessed this orb fly up and then fly off. And that's the last time it happened. It never happened again. So my second story, which I wanted to share, which this one is a little bit different. It's a shared dream experience. So one night, I was asleep, and as you do when you're asleep, I was dreaming. And in my dream, I was walking down this old 2-lane highway, and it was very forested on both sides of the road, like trees almost kind of like hugging, almost making like a dome, like a lot of rural back road Arkansas streets. And it was snowy outside. And Elaine and I were walking next to each other down this road. And everything looked weird. The shadows looked to be wrong. The sky. The only way I could describe it is in my dream. Have you ever been in an eclipse? Especially like a partial eclipse where it's not 100% eclipse, but there's just a little bit of the sun still. And everything kind of has that weird shadows where the shadows take on the shape of the eclipse. In my dream, that's what the world looked like. And we're just having a conversation. I remember stopping on the road in the snow and turning to Elaine and saying, "It's 2 a.m. Why is the sun still up?" And I woke up. And I was like, wow, that was a weird dream. So I roll over and, it's morning. In the real world, it's morning. And I look at Elaine, and we do this thing every morning where we share, like, what was your dream of it? Like, how'd you sleep? What kind of, like, do you have any cool dreams? And she's like, "Actually, yeah, I did have a really weird dream." She said, "We were sitting in this cabin in the woods, and, next to this cabin was like this old 2-lane highway, and it was snowing outside, and we were having this conversation." And she said, "In my dream, I remember getting this weird feeling like something wasn't right. And so I looked over at you and I asked you, 'It's 2 a.m. Why is the sun still up?'" And of course, I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." And so, like, still sharing this story, like, it sends like a shiver down my spine. Like, I get kind of like teary eyed, like, even talking about it. Because then I shared my story, and we both just sat there like, what on earth was that? I have a dream we're walking down this road in the woods, and it's snowing, and it's 2 a.m. and the sun is up, and I ask her this, and then she turns in her dream, and we're in this cabin looking out a window at a 2-lane road in the woods, and she notices something weird, asks me, "It's 2 a.m. Why is the sun still up?" So never had anything like that ever happen again. I can say we did not watch TV that night. We didn't watch videos online that night. I read my book. She read her book. Completely different books. Mine was a science fiction book, which, okay, yeah, you could say that may have something to do with it, but there was no snow. There was no weird sun, whatever. She was reading some probably psychological thriller because that's what she's into. And so no shared experience. in the real world to prompt a shared dream, but it was by far one of the weirder things that I've experienced like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed these two stories, and I look forward to hearing all of yours. Thanks, Lisa.
That is awesome. Okay. Whew. Of course, I had already, when Cody sent me his stories, of course, I'd already listened to them, and wow, just each time, I think, well, the green thing, definitely. Ugh. That's just super spooky. um, and I will say, I have had people, and I told Cody this, like, I've had people reach out to me from Lone Oak, Arkansas, and they have experienced weird lights, especially between the hours of, like, I want to say like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, like early morning. So weird. And then just that shared dream experience, like, I can't imagine having that kind of dream and then waking up and Daryl having that dream. Anyway. Ooh, spooky. Definitely awesome. Definitely appreciate that, Cody. So thank you for sharing. Okay, this next story is here in Arkansas. It is a friend that will remain anonymous, a listener friend that is anonymous. So, this is their story. I have heard of a cousin who passed away probably due to poisoning. Where my parents live isn't very far from a cemetery, just past the woods behind their old house. One day, my dad was outside doing yard work, and the cousin who passed away walked up to my dad from the woods. Startled, my dad said, "You don't belong here. You need to go back." After several times of telling him that, he finally turned away and evaporated into thin air. Mom said Dad came in and relayed the story to her, and he was as white as a sheet. Whew. My goodness. She goes on to say this scared him to death. Evidently on her dad's side of the family, all of them have sixth sense. They hear things, they see things all the time. Some of the cousins have that too. This person does not. They hear stuff. In fact, they hear stuff in their own personal home, a lot of knocking in their personal home. But they said one of their cousins was helping another clean a house after it had experienced several deaths, and they heard screams to the point of having to leave the house. And I guess both the cousins had heard it. So, yeah. And then they said that cousin never went back to the house. They said one of my aunts had passed away. She was very close to the youngest aunt, as in that cousin. The youngest aunt said one night she was awakened to see her sister standing beside her bed. She told her she was okay, but hadn't crossed over yet, and that she was okay, and then she was gone. Another story just from our anonymous listener friend's family was one of their little cousins was very young, and she talked about the old man in the room she slept in. And this was my grandpa's room before he passed away. She had never met him or seen him, and they would always tease their little cousin and say, "Y'all got the shine," laugh out like in The Shining. So again, their family is just full of, all of them having like that shine, quote unquote, that, sixth sense going on. So it's very interesting. But again, our listener friend has never seen anything, but like I said, experiences knocks and bangs and just has, no clue. Just, it's like, please just go away. So anywho, so chilling. And this story of their dad is set in the late 80s. So, even spookier, the 80s. I love it. So, thank you so much for that story. It's awesome. So, we have a couple more to come, and these have all just been so interesting and great. So, yay, 2 more. So, this next spooky story is submitted from Sheila. So, this happened like in 19 1997. I almost said, I don't know what I almost said, 1997. And this story is out of Vicksburg, Mississippi. So Sheila was actually traveling, like she had traveled down to New Orleans to meet up with her sister because her sister had her daughter for, I think, a week. And so she was traveling back, and she decided to stop in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And it's right there, kind of along where the Mississippi River is. And there's just some beautiful antebellum homes. So they stayed the night there, and then they were going to get up the next day, and they decided to go see an antebellum house. And again, this is 97. They called the number, they picked out a house from this brochure that was in the hotel, and they call, and they're talking to the lady, and they were like, about a tour. And so the lady was like, yeah, I can give you a tour. These are private homes. You can just pay over the phone, and then you show up, and, this is where the house is. Just show up and get like on the porch that kind of faces the river of this antebellum home, and be there by 10 a.m. And then someone will be there to give you a tour. And so they got up, and this is Sheila and her daughter. And her daughter at the time is 3 years old, okay? So a 3-year-old. So she gets to the house, and they are on the porch, and her daughter is saying, to Sheila, she's looking at the house, and she's like, I've been to this house. And she was like, no, baby, I don't think that you have been to this house. Like, they had never been to Vicksburg. They, to her knowledge, she had never been there. And so she kept saying, no, I've been to this house before. And she kept saying it over and over. So Sheila actually called her sister and was like, hey, did you happen to stop in Vicksburg, or did you guys see maybe a different antebellum home when you were in New Orleans? Did you tour, one of the old mansions or whatever? And she was like, no. So her daughter, Stephanie, like kept on. She was like, yes, I've been to this house. And she said to Sheila, she said, if you go in this room, and she pointed, because she doesn't know, the right from the left. If you go to this room on this side, it's kind of orange, kind of pink, and there's a big black piano with the lid open in this room. And she's like, okay. She's kind of just looking at her like, okay. And then she was thinking, okay, well, maybe this brochure has pictures or something, and like, she saw them. So she looks at the brochure. The brochure had 0 pictures of the house. Well, they're just sitting there, and time's passing, and it's like maybe 15 after 10, and no one had come out. So Sheila calls the number and asks, she's like, hey, we've been sitting here. Is the tour still happening? Well, the lady answered, and she said, well, they came out and no one was there. And so I guess they missed you, or, I don't know what the confusion was, because Sheila and them had been there well before 10, and they were in the right spot. They were sitting in rockers on the porch where they were told to be. So anyway, the lady on the phone was like, well, you just sit tight. I know this house, and I'll just come give you a tour myself. So this lady comes over, and she had actually been, I guess, like the former she was the housekeeper for the home, and she was actually a descendant of some of the enslaved staff, like going way back. Okay. And again, this is an old Mississippi property. So anyway, she gives the tour, or she's going to start the tour, and she's, leads them inside the house, and right, like Stephanie said, to the right is a room like that has a baby grand piano, and the room is peach. So it's kind of orange, kind of pink, like exactly what Stephanie said. And Stephanie said, I told you so. Like, she's just standing there like, hey. And so, Sheila tells the lady asked if she had been there before. And then, Sheila tells her about the experience, and the lady's face just goes ashen, she is stunned. Her face is stunned, and she's just like, okay. So they go on. They're like, okay, let's move on. They're continuing the tour, and it's just Sheila and Stephanie, and they go through this indoor it's like an indoor galley kitchen, which leads to the outdoor kitchen, which was what, they mainly cooked in when, especially in the summertime. Well, especially in these large antebellum homes that were built of wood, they didn't want the kitchen and the cooking inside for fires and all of that. So, and then they were going to go on to the outdoor, like there were slave quarters or whatever to look at. So they're going on, and Stephanie just outright refuses to go any further. Like, she won't cross the threshold. She is, and she's 3, and she's like, I'm not going, and you can't make me. Like, over and over and over, they're trying to coax her, and she's like, no. And they're just looking at her like, okay. And she will not move. And she says, that is where the man was mean to that little girl. And they just stop. And, the woman, again, her face is just stricken, like totally freaked out. And Sheila's freaked out. And of course, Sheila's just thinking, okay, well, I'm sorry. So, she was like, I'm sorry. We're going to have to, we're going to have to leave. I'm just going to have to get her home. And the lady was like, I'll give you a refund. And she was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And she was like, no, I'll give you a refund. And the lady was so freaked out by this incident. And Sheila didn't get, of course, she's got to deal with her daughter. And she would love to know what the lady knew, because her face was saying like something happened, like, what was it? But of course, Sheila never found out. So she just loaded Stephanie up and they left. So obviously Stephanie had some sort of experience there. And again, she was 3 and totally freaked out Sheila and whatnot. But she did have one other creepy incident when she was young. So when Stephanie was 5, so a few years later, would have been around 1999. So Sheila was busy, and so Stephanie was with her aunt. And so her aunt took her to this lighthouse. They were in Daytona Beach, but she wasn't sure if the lighthouse was close by the beach or if it was where this lighthouse was. But they went to this lighthouse to do a tour, and kind of at the bottom, like, it's kind of a spiral staircase to get to the top of the lighthouse. And they tell you there's 150 stairs. And so they're counting stairs. And when they get to one particular stair, Stephanie just looks at it and she's like, that's where it happened. And her aunt's like, what happened? She's like, I don't know, but that's where it happened. And so they go on and they get to the top, and they continued, counting the stairs. So they knew what stair it was. And at the very top of the stairs, it's showing pictures of like the lighthouse keepers through the years. And like on one particular incident or one particular picture, it said that this particular light keeper, like, he had a heart attack and died on the 57th step. And so the aunt is like, that was the step where Stephanie had pointed and said that's where it happened. And she thought, well, maybe they tell you that at the bottom, or maybe there was a sign somewhere at the bottom. Again, she's 5, but still, like, maybe someone mentioned it and she just missed it or whatever. Well, they get back down and there was nothing to indicate anything. The only indication of that happening was at the top, when you get to the top of the lighthouse. So later on, they get together with Sheila, and she's like, so how was your day? And talking about it, and she said, well, your kid was weird, like, that had a really creepy situation. And she tells Sheila about it, and she's like, it was totally creeped out everybody, like, whoa. So no clue why. It's just totally unexplained. If she had some sort of sixth sense or memory, or I don't even know. Like, let me know what you guys think on that. But it's very interesting and very creepy. And she said that Stephanie, like, those were the only 2 incidences, and they only happened when she was little, and that happened a long time ago, and nothing else has happened since. So crazy. So really, really, really creepy. Oh, creepy. So anyway, so I myself kind of all end it on me, and I think I've told this story. It seems like I've told this story. I don't know if I've told this story to you guys. So I have had my own personal situation. So we actually built a house we started building in 2010, and we finished and moved in February of 2011. And just the first year, there were some weird things that happened. And it was only in the first year, and there was nothing malevolent about it or whatever, but there were some weird things. And so you know how when you live in a home, you do have like kind of your 1 year builder's warranty. And so we actually had a situation where I noticed that we had some like water damage in like our master bath. I was like, ooh, that shouldn't be there. So come to find out, like they had to retile our master bath. So no big deal. So I was showering actually in our guest bath, and I'm showering, I'm doing my thing, and I hear the door open. And I just think, okay, Daryl or Elle, someone has walked in. Elle would have been only 3 at the time. So I didn't think it was her, but I'm like, Daryl? And you know how you do. You know how you hear. You know what it sounds like. I mean, someone walked into the bathroom and nothing. And then I pull back the shower curtain and there's nothing there. And I'm like, okay. That was weird. And I tell Daryl, and Daryl is a super huge skeptic. I mean, he never believes in anything I say. um, anyway, and he was like, oh, okay. And then there were a few more instances like, especially we had like a bonus room that was upstairs. So we had stairs going to the bonus room, and the stairs were carpeted. And at that time, Daryl would work out of town during the week. He would be gone a few days. And so it would just be me and Elle at night, and I would set the alarm and all that stuff. And so she went to bed pretty early. I mean, when we first moved in, she was 3. And so there was one night, he was gone. I was upstairs. I would go upstairs to kind of like let her go to sleep and be, away from her so she could, everything was quiet or whatever. And so I'm upstairs and I hear like footsteps on the stairs. And of course I'm like, Elle is out of bed, and she shouldn't be. I mean, anyway, and I'm thinking, okay. So I get up and I go look and nothing's there. And that was kind of a repetitive thing. I don't think it only happened once. So that wasn't fun. And there were a couple more instances just with like some voices upstairs, like the door would slam to that bonus room. So there was just some activity there. But there was one night, like Elle was actually gone. She was staying at my mom's for the night. Like we would have a date night. And so she was gone. And me and Daryl were like in our living room. And this is the same house. We're in the living room, laying on the couch, just kind of, watching TV or whatever. And I don't even remember, it was it was daylight. It wasn't like night. I think it was probably like 7-ish, let's say. I don't know. But there is a huge crashing noise coming from, and I will say it was coming from our garage, which our bonus room that I'm talking about was above the garage. So it was more at the front of the house. Okay. So we were more at the back center of the house, and it was a huge noise. Like it sounded like someone ran their car into our house. Like that's what I thought happened. Like, I'm like, something has happened. Like something has fallen into our house, like something major. And I mean, we get up like so quick. I am up and nothing. There was nothing. Like our house was completely still. Nothing happened. There wasn't this huge crash into our house. I mean, it was huge. Like, and both of us heard it. So, and I'm totally freaked out. I literally grab like a knife from the kitchen, and I'm stalking around, and I'm like scared out of my mind. Anyway, that was totally creepy. And I will say we had these incidents happen within the first year. And I would say we lived there for 7 years, completely fine, completely nothing, especially, the last 5 or 6 years, absolutely nothing happened. So that was really interesting. And I will say I have lived in my current home for 5 years now. And I've had 2 incidences and it's just totally weird, where I'm home alone and I am getting ready in my bathroom, which is on an outside wall. I have like a window and whatever. And I'm in there and I hear ma, like that, like ma. And I'm thinking it's Elle. Like it sounds like Elle screaming, "Mom!" Like you just get that. Okay. And you just freeze because it was totally silent. It was totally silent in my house. I'm the only one there. I'm getting ready in my bathroom and that happens and I freeze. I'm frozen because no one's home. So then I'm creeping. I'm like, Elle? So I'm calling out. Like maybe she's come back home. Maybe something happened and she's come back home and I didn't even realize it. Like maybe she got in while I was in the shower. Whatever. Trying to rationalize this. And I'm creeping around. I'm totally freaked out. And no one's home. No one's home. And I remember I was getting ready to go to lunch, but I had some time and I booked it. I mean, I finished getting ready so quickly. I got out of my house. I mean, I was totally freaked out. Totally freaked out. And I can't remember how long ago that's been. Maybe like a year ago. I don't know, but it has happened one time since. And it was the same thing happened. The same thing. And it's so weird, but because it had happened again, I don't think it didn't freak me out as much the second time. Like it's still kind of, I mean, I freeze and I'm like, what am I hearing? And I do check. I'm like, I'm checking outside. I'm checking if someone's around because like I said, it's an outside wall. There are windows. So, and I can't explain it. Like I can't. And Elle always says that our downstairs is haunted. She always said that like when we first moved in because she would have slumber parties and massive slumber parties. And she'd be like, when we have 2 levels. And anyway, she'd be like, our downstairs is haunted. I can hear voices from my dance room. And I'm like, whatever. But maybe she's not great. She's not, I won't say whatever to that, but whatever. So is it something? I don't know. It could very well be. I've thought about setting up a camera down there for sure. So we'll see. Maybe I need to set it up in my bathroom. So tell me if anyone has had those experiences. I would love to hear more. And also I do have, I am going to do this kind of quarterly, but I do have more spooky listener stories that I'm going to have another one of these probably in January. So if you have a spooky, unexplained story, thank you for sharing it and also share it with me. You can message me, you can email me. All my information and contact is in the show notes. So yeah, send me your scary, spooky, weird, unexplained stories and we'll all enjoy them. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. So this is of course my spooky Halloween season edition episode. So next week is going to be the final spooky season Halloween spectacular edition. And we're going to be going over a Bloody Mary, the folklore, not the drink. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Please leave everything, comment, rate, all the things, reach out to me. And I appreciate you guys listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye.